Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads with my co-host, my partner, Mr. Sean Francis. I am Brian Altunian. And today we've got two very special guests talking about a couple of different things. They're programmed to help children with special needs issues, especially early on in the beginning of the development phase. And also a podcast that they're working on, talking about partnership, contributions to this community and to a broader community as well. So this is going to be a fun and exciting episode, so stay tuned for another Just Two Dads. Hi again, everybody. I am Brian Altuni along with Sean Francis, and this is the episode. Right, we stopped numbering them, right, Sean? We're in season 4. I don't even know what season we're in anymore. 180 episodes or whatever of Just Two Dads. Sean and I started this podcast about now almost 4 years ago as Just Two Dads, talking about the issues that we're dealing with our children who had some sort of special needs issues. Some people would call them severe needs, some would call them disabilities. But Sean and I started having this conversation we should have this conversation and include other people. And we kept encountering amazing folks who were servicing the special needs community. And we thought, let's create a platform so we can shine the light on the work that they're doing to help our community, because it goes beyond just the special needs community. So we're excited about today's episode. And before we get there, I just want to thank folks. If you're catching us on Facebook Live, thank you. And, put comments in there. We'll put them up on the screen if we can. Also, if you're catching us on our YouTube channel, or better yet, on our Just Two Dads podcast.com website, leave us a comment there as well. Hit the like and subscribe button if you can. And we look forward to your comments. If you want to email us, you can email us at wearejusttwodads@gmail.com. If you're catching us on podcast outlets, thanks for making us part of your listening day. And same with our folks, our friends and family down in the U.S. Virgin Islands on WSTX AM radio. A couple of things really quickly. I want to thank Sean Hall out in Hawaii, who supports our efforts. Can't do the show without him. And our sponsors, Billy Footwear, who do adaptive footwear for all kinds of people. Amazing story. Go to Billy Footwear and get an additional 10% off if you click on the link that's in the show notes. And in fact, they're doing a 60% sale right now. So you'll get 10% off the 60% off as well. So reach out to Billy Footwear. See the story of Billy Price, the founder. It's really a fascinating story and really great stuff. So thank you to Billy Footwear. And we'll get to the den at the end. We had a chance to have one of our guests on our call last week, actually, for our Father's Day episode. And so hopefully we can see more of him and other dads on our den support group for men. But again, we'll talk about that on the show. So without further ado, that's a long intro. We're excited about our guests. I'm going to let Sean make the introduction and welcome our guests and tell you about it. This will be a fun conversation. Sean Francis, how are you, my friend?
Well and blessed. Glad to be here in the figurative and literal sense, in every way, shape, and form. Sure. To those within the sound of my voice, whether you're catching us live or after the fact, love you, thank you, and appreciate you. I am always appreciative of being able to make connection with people that are members of the special needs community. We've talked about beyond special needs, just caregiving, which is much more of a broader and I think more accurate and inclusive term. My appreciation for people that are members of that community that I have something in common with, being a member of the community by circumstance, especially, that runs deep. One of my first field trips as a chaperone with my son's class, it was the first time I developed an affinity and respect for those that stand up in the room and become members of the community by choice. And our guests today are people who are, just that. They have no children with any disabilities. They have jumped in and are members of the community by way of the service that they provide. They have unique and intriguing backgrounds themselves, which have brought them to the place that they're at today, where they run a business together that provides behavioral therapy. And that is none other than Sean Ranel and Chiante Williams-Ranel. Welcome to Just Two Dads.
Hey
Thank
guys,
you.
thank you.
Very
Thank you.
happy to
Thank
be
you.
here.
Thank you.
Good to have you
Yes,
both.
yes.
Thank you.
So you probably see yourself just doing what you do, being who you are. Don't see yourself as a hero, but those things are actually one of the prerequisites for being a hero, wearing a cape. Not so.
Mhm.
With that said, every hero has an origin story, from where their powers come from, and everything. And it's interesting because I always say that who you are and how you were raised and where you were raised, figuratively and literally, not only affect who you are today, but affect how you deal with the diagnosis that your child may face. That
Mhm.
doesn't apply to either one of you. So I'm really interested to hear your path and what got you to the point where you are and how you came about um, to start the service that that you provide, and tell us the name of the business and everything.
Mhm. Now go ahead. Go
Awesome.
ahead, Chiante.
Oh, okay. So, born and raised in Seattle, Washington, um, to a single mother, and just really saw her commitment to her family and kind of changing the trajectory of um, what we understood to be just normal, but anybody else would understand it to be just, abject poverty. And just her commitment to saying, every generation is going to do a little bit better, and then we're going to get our family long term out of the mud. And so, with that, studied hard and was accepted to Pepperdine University. That's how I found my way to Los Angeles, California, where I live now. And there at Pepperdine, because it's a Christian school, they are really focused on service. Freely you receive, freely give. And so, as part of our graduation requirements, we had to find service that we did, and we had a certain amount of hours every semester that we had to do. Um, Being a freshman without a car, my service hours were across the street at the elementary school. Loved kids, always have loved kids, and just was willing to be wherever they needed me. And found myself working in a classroom, pulling the kids in the back to read to them, helping them sound out their words. And I would notice that there were like a group of kids that I would never work with. And so just ask the teacher, do we not have time every time? I notice that I'm never working with these kiddos. And she, let me know, well, those are the ones that need extra help. And we do have a resource. Um, back then it was called special education, but we do have what we know now a resource personnel that comes around once a week, and she'll work with them. But they are the ones that, it just would take too much time. So after a while, because in the beginning the kids are like, "Who are you? We don't want to work with you." The teacher gave me the idea, come to lunch, come hang out with them at lunch. I was coming after lunch to help, kind of build rapport with them, so that they see that you're there for just fun and not just working with them, and maybe that will help. Well, being able to do that, I got to know not only the kids that I was there to help, but the other kiddos that she would say it would take too long to help. So building that, attachment to them, I saw that yes, they didn't perform the same way in the classroom, but we had one little guy. I was in the third grade classroom. We had one little guy. They called him Jeopardy because all these little facts he just knew. What's the capital of Alaska? Do you know? Just these little facts. And I'm just like, okay, well, the teacher's saying he can't sit down and read with me, but he's getting these facts from somewhere.
Somewhere.
Yeah, he's able
Yeah.
to, recall them. And so it just occurred to me, they do learn, they're just learning differently. So after a while, I convinced the teacher, can I come a little earlier and work with all of them? I've really gotten to know all of them. Now it's kind of sad if I don't get to, we're all buddies now. And so that's where my love for working with kiddos that learn differently came from. Initially, we did not have any kids that I knew of that were on the spectrum that were in the class, but definitely neurodivergent, definitely kids that just, were mainstream because there was not a place to put them. So my entire time there, I started in the classrooms and then began to help the who we know now as a resource teacher with kiddos that needed extra help, being able to come early. And I would say that I was just I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the creativity that it takes to try to meet people on the level that they're at. To because everybody learns, we just learn in different ways. So the
Right.
creativity that it takes, and then I fell in love with getting to know them. I mean, you say that it takes a superhero to work with these kiddos. I feel like all of them are superheroes because it's
Mhm.
like kind of what the world sees is Clark Kent. but when you get to know them, they're Superman. You know what I mean? And but you have to take that time. You have to take that time and figure out a creative way to access them, a creative way to get to know them. And not everybody was able to do that. So I felt like it was a cool gift to be able to take the time to peel back those layers, because once you reach them, it's just like, nice to meet you. This is who you are, and I fell in love with it, and eventually just started working with behavioral agencies, and so I worked with some where we would be in the schools all day. I worked with others where we're at home. The last agency that I worked with, where I was able to work my way up the ranks and be the director of, the entire San Fernando and Antelope Valley, we had a lot of adults. And so the hard part for me with these adults is that it was very evident that they did not get services maybe until a few years before we were put in. So there was a lot of what I felt like was babysitting and not a lot of teaching, because it's hard to teach when we haven't established a functional form of communication. If, I tell my staff when I train them, if I have to put tape on your mouth for the whole day and say, now I need you to go out into the world and get all your needs met, by the end of that day, you're frustrated. By the end of that day, you're resorting to whatever maladaptive behavior you can resort to get your needs met. So without a functional form of communication, you have just the basics of getting your needs met. You're already starting out, with a deficit. So a lot of these older kiddos that we're working with, I'm seeing, they definitely can learn, but we've put them behind the curve so much because there weren't services given to them when they were younger. Now, there's a variety of reasons. I mean, the field has grown so much since we've all been in it, I'm sure. So back in the day, parents just didn't know what to access. I meet parents every day that still don't know that there's services available, that still don't know that your kid
free of charge.
does not have to have a diagnosis if there's a delay. There's so many things. So that education portion is huge. So definitely not coming for the parents, but just saying, I noticed that there was so much less that we were going to be able to teach them because there was so much that they just hadn't gotten. And so I was, nudging my clinical director. We got to start our early start program. We got to get them in here 0 to 3. And it wasn't just something that they were equipped to do. So when I was pregnant with our 5th and final child, I kind of told Sean while I was on maternity leave, hey, I'm going to be on maternity leave anyway. Do you mind if I just kind of never go back and try to start something? I really feel a passion for working with starting younger. I really want to start younger. So when we started StarChild Interventions, it was not even in the ABA space, although that's where all of my experience was. It was born from seeing so many kids that we couldn't help or couldn't adequately help because the foundation hadn't been built when they were younger. So we started in the 0 to 3. There were no diagnoses at that age. A lot of times they're getting those diagnoses around 3 to 4. It was just kiddos that had a delay, at least a 33% delay between their chronological age and their developmental age. So we started with that. We started play-based, teaching them contingencies. If you do this, then you get this, because life is built on contingencies. Life is built on, if I go to work, then I get a check. If I'm nice to this person, chances are I'm going to get more out of them. So just teaching them the basic contingencies, but also a functional form of communication. In the early start realm, we never rule out speaking, even though some of our kids are nonverbal. My kiddo was nonverbal until he was 4. So I know well that even if they are nonverbal, we're going to push for verbalization. But until then, we do have to give them some kind of functional form of communication. They have to have some way to relate to us and communicate.
So Chiante, I just want to stop just for a second, because this is awesome, and we're getting into a lot of the details of the intervention program. I kind of want to go. I know.
That's why I want to go first.
Okay. Do you see the effect of what you've just done? See, I'm tripping over my words because
no, but tell me, please.
all you're doing is you're speaking about that which you're passionate about. And one of the most dynamic things. For those of you that are looking at this on live on Facebook or catching it after the fact on YouTube, you're looking at the video component of it. I want to touch on, I met these two together at an event, spent more time talking with Sean because we were at the event. I was working a booth. They were both working a booth. Chiante was doing that. Sean then joined our group, The Den. He's been a guest on the show. So we've had more conversation. But one of the most heartwarming things to see is, as Chiante was just sitting there speaking, we're all blown away. And she's answering questions that I had not.
We haven't even asked yet.
Ask her, right? Because I'm already like, okay, because it's a great thing to and this is a very dangerous thing when you take a wordy person and give them everything you just gave. So I'm trying to make sure I condense this. I'm sorry, but I have been reaching out to any and everyone that played a role in my son's development because he graduated last month from high school.
Nice.
Awesome. Congratulations.
And thank you. And what each teacher and aide gives is fantastic. If you were to remain doing what you were doing as a provider, you know, that would be great. But you answer the question as to what makes you then go from what you were doing to starting a venture of your own. And we haven't had as much conversation and interaction, but one of the most heartwarming things is not only hear your passion, but Sean is sitting there and without saying a word, speaking all kind of language, because you could see him like glowing on fire as you're sitting there talking, and it's beautiful. He's like, yes, that's who I married. That's what she does. That's how she gets down.
100%.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. And to see that is something else. So it takes us where I think Brian wants to go, which is because it's one thing for her to say, if I start this thing, would you support me? You could continue with your career and still be supportive. But you're like, no. I'm going to put on the gloves with you two, and let's go ahead and beat up adversity together. So go ahead, Brian. I think that's where you were trying to go.
No, that's exactly it. Because you were saying, we did all the stuff, and then I after our fifth child. So I've already like, okay, so we had four. We've met, we've gotten married, and we fell in love, and this is what I loved about Sean, and this is what he loved, and so so that's all good because all that stuff is beautiful, and this program we know is incredibly valuable. But this is the beginning stages. So now that's it. You've started. You basically set it up. So Sean R, as opposed to Sean F. Tell us how.
Tell us about yourself, what you did, what you brought.
Right.
Right. Don't get there yet. Just kind of, because obviously we can see that. I love having a partner who's totally passionate about what they're doing. Like I get that. That's me. I'm in love with that entrepreneurial spirit. I love all that. So how did that happen for you? How did that all come together? Tell us.
I always like for her to go first because she's better at the words with me, and then I end up regretting it because she's so much better at the words than I am. But that's why this works. We're yin and yang. So me, I'm originally from Louisiana, Baton Rouge. Went to college in Chicago for architecture. Realized I could not draw a tree. I could draw blueprints and stuff. I had been doing that in high school, but then they asked me to draw a tree and a person. All that went out the window at that point. So I had to switch my major. I got into computer science. Did the college thing for about 2 years, and it just really wasn't my jam. So I left there, got a job at Gateway Computers. I don't know if you guys remember, the
Cow
computers.
Cow on it.
We're all dating ourselves, but yes.
Yeah,
for sure.
People are like, what? Gateway? What is that?
Gateway,
Exactly.
So that was my first job when I left college. Loved computers, stuck with that. Did that for about 10 years, and then eventually moved to Dallas, where I was a consultant, an IT consultant. And so I had a client that was in Los Angeles. And so at a happy hour, after we were working with the client, I saw Chiante and her friends at a table. And and so I'm like, okay, how am I going to get her away from them? Because I'm not walking up to all of them at the same time. And so I came up with this nice little plan to where I told their waiter, hey, you see her? Tell her that she won a happy hour prize at the bar and she has to come to the bar to pick it up. So she leaves, her area and comes over to the bar where I'm waiting, and I schmooze her, and the rest is history from there. And so
how long ago was that, Sean? How long ago was that?
Oh my gosh, a long time ago, 7 or 8 years ago.
8 years, 8 years ago.
Yeah. So it's been as you mentioned, we dated long distance for a while, about a year or so beforehand, and then I eventually came to Los Angeles. But while I was in Dallas, I did, outside of my 9 to 5, throw my hand in the hat of entrepreneurship, and I was, doing computer stuff and fixing people's computers on the side. and I hated the administrative part of it. I liked doing the talent part, which was the fixing, but I
Yeah.
hated all the back end stuff. So I just kind of stopped doing that and stuck with the 9 to 5. Her and I eventually met and got together. And as you mentioned, while we were pregnant with our fifth one, um, she told me that she was just not going to go back to work. And I was like, okay, all right, let's see how this is going to work. I trust you. I trust you. And so in my 9 to 5 at that time as well, once I got to Los Angeles, I had to, find another job. And so I found a job with the Honda racing team, being an IT administrator with them. I did that for a couple of years. And then during COVID, or towards the end of COVID, we decided to leave there and venture out and completely put all of my efforts towards, building our own empire. But one funny thing though is when we first started, and she is amazing with all this clinical stuff. Like there's so much stuff that I've learned from her that I had no idea about in the beginning.
Yeah.
But I did see where she was kind of deficient on the back end part of how to run the business, and so that's kind of where I came in. Because when she first started, I think the company email was like StarChild Interventions at Gmail, and I'm like, no, we got to get rid of that. Nobody's gonna take you serious with a Gmail, with a Yahoo, with a Hotmail. We can't have any of that. So that was kind of the start of my role in our company as IT. And then we eventually got employees, and then we needed benefits, and then all of this other stuff. And so that's kind of how we separate our roles. Is she does a lot of the clinical stuff, and I do a lot of the admin and IT and HR stuff.
Beautiful.
Yes.
That's nice.
So that's
Yin
kind
and
of
yang.
where it is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's cool. And I know that, and I definitely want to get into the early intervention program and the ABA and some of that stuff, because frankly, was my introduction into the special needs community. Was somebody recommended an early intervention program. But you guys also a podcast. So I'll talk about that just for a really quick second, because clearly this is an amazing partnership. This is not just like, this is a partnership in every sense of the word, right?
For sure.
Mhm.
For sure.
Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you guys have a YouTube channel. Do you want to talk about that just for a second? And we'll talk just briefly. We'll go back to the intervention program, but you guys have a YouTube channel. It's called Partners in Prosperity, which I'm putting up on the screen. And for those who are listening, Partners, the letter N, Prosperity. It's on YouTube.
Thank you.
So go check them out. Yeah.
Yes,
Talk about that a little bit, you guys. How does it come about? What are you guys planning on doing with that?
Yeah, so we were in a mastermind group with a bunch of other, high-level entrepreneurs. They're doing way bigger stuff than we were ever doing at the time. But what we noticed was that we were the only couple in the group, and there were probably 20 members, but we were literally the only couple. Everybody else's spouse stayed at home. And so in talking to people, we heard that, their spouse wasn't there because they either had to obviously still work, but a lot of it as well was that the spouse didn't completely co-sign on what they were doing. They needed more buy-in. They were like, hey, somebody's got to, keep this 9 to 5 while you go, exploring or whatever you want to do. And so we noticed that there's a lot of that going on. And so we wanted to create something to show people, hey, you can be a couple and work together as entrepreneurs and be around each other all the time. And it can still work. Now, that's what works for us. I'm not going to say that'll work for everybody, but our podcast is kind of geared towards entrepreneurs, families, pretty much anyone who wants to run their household better, who wants to go in business with their spouse. It's a lot of different things, but it's really centered towards how we kind of run our life as far as entrepreneurs working day to day together, raising our 5 kids and everything.
And we want to show couples too that they are the CEO and CFO of their household. So sometimes people think if they have a 9 to 5, they're not entrepreneurs, but they are, because companies run their business a certain way because it streamlines it and it sets them up for success. And if we give all that time and attention and, and do the exact things that the company that we're working for wants us to do for their benefit, we want to teach them to come home and do some of those same things for your benefit so that you can set yourself up to kind of run. So our first episode was called How to Run Your Family Like a Fortune 500 Company, because they're using our energy to run their companies to benefit them. We need to use that same energy to run our families, to benefit our families, because we do need to set our kids up, whether you have kids that are going to need long-term caretaking or whether you have kids that you want to make sure you are providing for their children. We need to start seeing our families as the lifeline to us being provided for instead of companies, because we just, with the shift right now, we just don't know the way that 9-to-5 companies are going to go.
Yeah.
And so we have to start treating our kids, our family, our labor as our own workforce, and kind of setting things up in that direction. So this podcast
I think
is different to that.
On a couple of fronts. First of all, I'm a huge fan of that idea. And I have always talked about with families, like it would be really great if the families got together, including the kids, and everybody had a job, right? Somebody was CFO, somebody was CAO, somebody was the marketing person, right? And give it and run your family like, so when you do like the week vacation, everybody's participating in the planning and the benefits and all that stuff. I think that's great. Second of all, the work that Sean and I do in the area of financial services, I've always said that if you ran your family business on basic 3 financial statements that they run Fortune 500 companies on, which is basically, you've got your balance sheet, your P&L and cash flow, right? Your balance sheet's your assets minus your liabilities. So you know what your assets are. Your P&Ls, your money coming in versus the money going out. And that cash flow is how you build long-term prosperity. You'll have a successful family venture. So I think what you guys are doing is brilliant, and we need more of those family voices together, because it is, man, if you don't have buy-in from your partner on what you're doing, that's an extra hill you got to climb.
Yep.
And their measure of success may be different than yours. Yeah.
It's can't really do hard. The other thing is, weights is the only place where you're going to, actually get resistance and gain muscle from that. That kind of resistance would give you stress and eventually death.
100%.
I think, or at least a lesser quality of life.
You're in the same boat, so you can't go different directions. So you have to figure out which way we're paddling. And, if this is my goal and this is your goal, how do we both get what we want, type thing.
Right. Yeah. One of the most valuable things that you said, which I think is so important in the world of experts, influencers, I'm doing air quotes and everything, is the most valuable quote unquote expert is the person that doesn't see himself as one, to me, because in this day and age, everybody's an expert on something. There are people that have 500 followers that give information. There's people that have millions that give information. And at least I know personally what I relate to more than anything. And as our influence grows, Brian and I together, and then individually, I think what carries so much weight and who resonates with me is a person that says, look, this is what works for me. And I'm not sure how that might work for you. And essentially, I'm not perfect. I'm not an expert. I've been doing this for X number of years. Here's what's worked for me. Here's what hasn't. And because you're speaking to who will relate to you, that itself carries so much more credibility than certain credentials and everything. And, I hate, I can name names, but I won't. I hate when, first of all, I don't like to say hate, but I really detest and recoil when people, outside of basic human rights, there's only a short list of things that everybody should do. Treat other people like you want to be treated. Treat people with respect and dignity. Outside of that, when someone says you should never do A, B, and C, you should always do such and such, it's just like, quit jamming your stuff down people's throat. Let them know what's on your plate, and maybe they want to take a bite of that, and they will enjoy it as well. Don't try and serve me asparagus if I don't like stink pea. Never mind.
For sure.
We do ourselves a disservice too, because we always tell them this is a community. So we want to learn from you. We want to create a community where we're all learning from each other. Because if we tout ourselves as the experts, then we're not putting ourselves in a position to learn. We're making you guys feel like we have all the answers, which we don't. And we're not putting ourselves in a position to learn from you. So we started every podcast by, throughout the podcast, we'll say, put in the comments, answer this question or tell us, because we want to learn too. We want to go to our comments at the end and learn from people that are watching us and have open up conversations and start conversations. It's going to be a learning journey for everybody, as opposed to us being the gurus and you being at our feet, because we don't want that pressure. I think that, and we talk about that. Anybody that's had any type of success knows that it's a wave, right? And the thing about waves is they crest and they crash. So we are going to crest, we are going to crash, and we don't want the pressure of you looking at us like we should have it all together, because some days we do, and other days, it's a crap show.
And the days that you don't, people get more value out of
Absolutely
that than anything else.
Yeah.
For instance, the Boston Celtics just won their 18th championship, whatever have you, right? As a Laker fan, not crazy about that.
Yeah,
for them. But
right.
But I'll tell you this much. I bet you the Dallas Mavericks learn more from that loss than the Celtics would learn from the victory. And no matter who you look at, you take the most successful, quote unquote, gurus or experts in any field. If they've been at it long enough, the more you tout yourself as the answer, at some point, that individual's humanity ends up being ends up not serving them and going against them. Because what happens is when a human frailty is revealed against this years of this perfection, people are like, oh, I never thought that he or she would do that. And people, the brand of the person takes a hit. Whereas, and not only that, that's old school. People want to be able to really identify with someone and have something in common with them, not just aspire to be the perfection that they think that person is.
Yes,
exactly.
Perfection is not welcome here. We tell our kids that all the time. Perfection is not
For
welcome.
sure.
Bring us your real
For
self
sure.
or nothing at all. Yeah.
Pursue it. It's okay. It's okay to pursue it, but it's not part of the human equation.
For sure.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes,
and,
for sure.
and that's part of I think our second episode is all about that. It's going over our failures and what we learned from them. So I mean, we're pretty upfront with
and what we learned.
we're pretty open about where we failed, but also the lessons that we learned from them. And so that's a really good thing about the podcast that we hope to continue doing is showing our vulnerability, showing that we don't have it all figured out, but this is what we're doing and this is what does work. So,
and praising families. We want to, like you said, Brian, when you talk about families kind of coming together and running themselves like a business, we want to make that cool. So many times I think that we're getting away from like the family unit as being like the cool thing, and so we want to make families working together, families kind of seeing themselves, even if both parents have their own thing that they're doing, seeing themselves as a unit, a cohesive unit, and figuring out that they can rise and fall together. We really want to, bring that back.
Love that. Yeah, because a lot of times, families break up. A lot of it is financial and again, being on the different paths and perspective. And I started to say earlier is that, somebody's measure of your success as an entrepreneur may be different than yours. If the expectation of a spouse who's not involved in your business is that you're going to be successful, and success means making X amount of dollars. Yeah. Then that's a different focus than the service that I'm providing and what benefit that I'm getting that's non-monetary yet valuable. And so again, having that open, really it's all about open discussion, open conversation, and alignment, right? At the end of the day, you want to be aligned.
100%, for sure.
I love that you're doing. And I know, God, we took you off the intervention program.
That's okay.
A little
We're
bit
passionate
there.
about both.
I get it. I feel it. But I will say this about early intervention. When my daughter was diagnosed, we had no expectation that there was going to be a diagnosis. It hit us like a kick in the gut. And the first thing that somebody suggested to us was actually two things: find a local regional center and find an early intervention program. And we were lucky to get into the UCLA early intervention program, and it changed everything for us as far as aligning our expectations with what my daughter's capabilities were. Understanding different ways that she learned, different ways that she was able to communicate. We used to joke, before she could speak, she was doing sign language. She learned how to do sign language, which was really cool. We learned sign language, and the thing that I found the most adorable about what she was learning was she loved animals, and she would do sign language, and she would end every sentence like, more cheese, please, and then cow, duck, pig. Everything ended with cow, duck, pig, which was so awesome. But it was but that ease of communication changed everything for her, because at least she could communicate where people forget that like terrible twos is when our kids are 2 years old, they're learning that there is some communication, then there's just frustration with lack of ability to communicate, right? So they have temper tantrums because they're not getting their needs met.
Yes.
And so I love the fact that you guys are that. So we could talk more about the early intervention program, Chiante, now that we can talk about other stuff. Because you got into this based on what you were seeing, what you're experiencing, and how many children do you serve now, and how do people find you, and how do people get to you, and what are you doing as far as getting on the community? And we'll remind people it's called StarChild Interventions.
And so we started out just doing early intervention. That's where my heart was. That's really what I wanted to do. What we were finding out. So unlike ABA, where you age or you graduate based on the goals that you hit, you kind of have an exit criterion that you age out on. Early intervention is not like that. Early start, I should say, that's funded by the regional center. So if you parents are out there and you're thinking that something's awry, but you're not sure, it doesn't hurt to contact your local regional center. There's 22 of them along California. There are ones that are in everybody's catchment area to have them do an assessment just to see if there's a delay. It does not mean that there's going to be a diagnosis, just to see if there's a delay. And sometimes just getting those early start services can close that gap between that chronological age and your developmental age. So starting there is a great place to start. I know the regional centers, at least a lot of the ones that we work with, are overwhelmed, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So keep reaching out, keep trying, keep doing that, because that's so important. Brian, that information that you got, it's so important that you don't just kind of wait around and see. And so what we were seeing though is because they age out at 3, some parents weren't sure what to do next. So we were starting, around 2.5 to say, hey, we don't want you to be surprised by this, but in 6 months, you are going to age out. I think during COVID, they were extending services a little bit, but other than that, there's no other time where they will let you stay on outside of being 3. So we would say, what are the things that you're feeling like you need? Best case scenario, parents will say, this was great. My kid is speaking more. My kid is engaging more. I think we're good just to go to preschool. And we feel like, okay, great. But then there's some parents that say, I feel like there's still something there. They're still not making eye contact. And while I feel like the services have been great, I don't feel like, so then what do we need to do? Is it speech? Do we need to set you up with the SELPA in your area? Are you going to have to go through your insurance? Do we need to, let you know how that works? Some of them want a psych eval. And that's what's going to get them the diagnosis. So we set them up, we help them out. We are in network with a lot of insurances. We work with them or, connect them back to their regional center. And then once they get that, that's a whole nother process, because parents feel like they want to know, but then when it's reality at that point. So now we've gone from, this is just a suspected delay. We're going to come in a couple of hours a week. We're going to work with this. And to now we've transitioned to, there's an actual diagnosis at play here. So now we're talking about more than a couple of hours a week. Now we're talking about some intensive therapy. Now we're talking about mom and dad, where now you guys have goals and you have to come in and do something. And we have parents in all stages of life. They're mourning what they thought was going to be. I tell all of my therapists, you're coming in and this is not what parents wanted. It's very invasive to have you in their home, working with their kids, watching what they're doing so many times. So because we transition most of our learners from early start to ABA, we are usually parents' first stop with ABA services. So we need to have grace. We need to have compassion. We need to include ourselves on the team. What I don't want is for you to come in and say, step aside, mom and dad, I'm the professional. Let me put on my cape. I'll do this. Because then we're not honoring the nights that parents stayed up for 5 hours trying to implement that intervention that we told them to do. But they're tired. They just want to give their kid the freaking cookie. We know that they're supposed to man more, but they've been up all night. We need to honor this work that they're putting in and say, hey, we are part of the team together. So mom, between the hours of 7 and 12, if you're saying all interventions are off, I just need to get through the night, I need a rest, then let's do that. But let's be aware that that's what we're all doing. So we are their first stops a lot of times, because what we did is early intervention ended up progressing into an ABA side, because we had so many families that when we would check in, we do the 6 months before they graduate and the 6 months after they graduate to see kind of where they were still hemming and hawing. They were still, I'm not sure. And we were like, you got to get them into services, and so they felt more comfortable with us. We had been with them since their kid was 1, and we just wanted to make sure they got services. These services are voluntary. So we need to make it as easy for parents to access it and as convenient for them as possible. So that's how we kind of transition into offering ABA services. It came from a lot of our learners that were getting a diagnosis. and weren't quite sure where to go next. It feels
Mhm.
so good to be like, okay, we knew this was a possibility. We have a diagnosis. Let's talk about what we're going to do next. We're going to transition you over to our early start side. You're still going to have your same QA person that is your friend at the factory that you can call at the office. Sometimes they don't want to complain to the therapist. It's awkward, right? So you're still going to
Mhm.
have your same QA person. You're still going to have the same people at the office side you can reach out
Mhm.
to. But now we're going to transition you to this. We understand that you came from early start that had no, demands on you, to now you're in ABA that has a lot of demands. We are going to give you that grace because we understand that. So kind of working with them, I think, has been into ABA kind of started from the early start side and wanting to be there for our families. Now ABA is kind of taken off so much. We don't do as much on the early start side. We still do have some
Mhm.
regional centers that we work with, but it's been easier to kind of work with the regional center outside of being vendored for them to kind of refer parents to us, because 9 times out of 10 parents have to go through their insurance for
Mhm.
ABA. And so you need vendors that can help you get through that process. Vendors that are sitting just on the regional center side waiting for referrals can't really help with that as much, because that's not how they get their referrals. So
Right.
what we've seen is that we've figured out how to unravel the insurance process that kind of stops parents from even trying. They're just like, this is too much.
Sure.
Maybe I'll try later. And so we don't do as much on the regional center side now, because now we're in the insurance unraveling department. And as Sean can tell
Yeah.
you, that's a whole nother
It's
beast in
a
and of itself.
I
whole
Yeah.
gotta,
ballgame.
Sure.
I gotta tell you, everything everything that you just gave there, Chiante. I have I want to share what I got from that for parents at home who are looking for services, and for people in the just a consumer looking for service, and
Mhm.
for anyone that might be looking at this that gives a service. As you were talking there, what I realized is, anytime you're seeking a service from a doctor to an electrician, a contractor, or whatever have you, you're looking for someone that's qualified. Sometimes people get so caught up in the credentials
Mhm.
that they forget that they're looking for a person. When you get credentials and licenses, that simply allows you to go out and use who you are to provide a service. What separates you from a lot of people, where it really hit me, is when you started talking about, again, it kind of goes back to not quote unquote being the expert. I remember we've had primarily good experiences, but I had two providers that we worked with where we had to strike a balance between admitting that we aren't the experts and acknowledging that we're the parents and we do know our child.
Mhm.
Because there were two
Yeah.
people that were like, I don't think we're going to have you come back. You're not a bad person, but you're not working. You just described a situation where you're working in concert with the parent. This
Yeah.
is somebody that we had two people that wanted to come into our home and tell us what to do. And
Mm.
and so, first of all, anyone out there that's providing a service, because I think Brian and I approach this the same way as we're giving, working in financial services, remain human.
Yeah.
Know
Mhm.
that no matter what your expertise, whatever your expertise might be, you're there to help people, meet them halfway, and honor their humanity.
Yeah.
If I was looking for ABA services, and this is interesting, I wouldn't have said this up until today. I wouldn't be surprised, but now more than ever at this given moment, if I was looking for ABA services, I'd be like, no, we need to go talk to them,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Not that I felt the opposite beforehand, because I thought when I met you guys, what you do is great. That's a great idea and everything. But now there's substance behind it when you're talking
Mhm.
about just the humanity with which
Yeah.
you meet a family. So anyone that's providing a service, meet with humanity. Anyone that's looking for a service, make sure that whoever's providing it meets with is meeting you halfway with humanity. And
That's a
we
good
want to
point.
do everything that we can to have as many people know about what it is that you do, and as many people entities that we can connect you with. Go ahead, Brian. You were going to say something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I just, as as a parent receiving that first bit of information,
Mhm.
as individuals, we process that information differently. Again, we've had this conversation in the den.
Mhm.
Dads process that information differently than moms. What the action steps that they take, having to overcome a lot of those cultural,
Yes. Yes.
familial, all of
For
Yes.
those
sure.
things that you like.
Mhm.
right? You're like, and then somebody come in and go, I honestly remember when our neurologist gave us the initial diagnosis, it was a Charlie Brown's cartoon for me, because she was talking and I didn't hear wah, 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 wah.
Yep.
After an hour, I had to go,
Yeah.
can you just in plain English, what does this mean? Right. And then her response was, okay, I'll break it down for you. These are all the things she'll never do. This is basically what she had said. Like, she's never going to drive. She'll never graduate school. She'll live at home or need assisted living her whole life. She'll never drive a car. She'll never live on her own. Like, all that. It was
no humanity.
An avalanche overwhelm. An avalanche of overwhelm. And so, it took me hours to decompress from that.
Yeah,
and then at that point, like, what now? And to be able to have you guys that have compassion, that understand that and bring that level of humanity, answers the question of what now, what next, what's next. And you don't have to worry about long-term. This is just what you need to do next.
Right now.
And then we'll help guide you. What's immediately in front of you and what's next. And so, again, I love the fact that you guys are doing that. And I know you're based in Southern California. You're in West LA, right?
Yep.
And are you looking to expand beyond, or what's like long-term goals for you guys?
We have a huge team in the Antelope Valley. We have a huge team in the Antelope Valley. We have some in Santa Clarita. What we've done is we've grown according to where our families moved. We are attached to our families. Our families are attached to us. So we had a little one that we've had since he was 18 months, moved to Anaheim. And so we brought a team to Anaheim. We have one team in Anaheim supporting that little one. What I love to say is, because we are so young and don't have a ton of overhead and have a lot of bureaucracy, I do know, we go to these meetings and they say, hey, at some point, somebody is going to try to acquire you. Well, we're not there yet. So we get to make a lot of decisions that are not in the interest of the investors that have acquired us, but just in the interest of kind of what we do. So we can make the decision. Yes, one kid in Anaheim is worth us going all the way down there and starting a team. So we expand organically as our families need us. So we are all over. We have our biggest offices in West LA, but we have one in Valencia. We serve Los Angeles, because we're still with the West Side Regional Center. So a lot of our learners that come out of there, we transfer transition them into ABA. So we are all over. It is worth reaching out to us and kind of seeing, because we're all over, that allows you to we may have a sphere that you may fit into that we're already kind of up and running in.
And just a really quick question for you. So after they age out and they go into ABA, do you guys refer out to other kinds of educational support groups, or because a family thinks like, okay, well, now is my child going to go to school? Like, what are the limitations? What can my child do? Do you guys go beyond that, or how do you generally handle it? And I'm asking that specifically because we're close friends with a school that handles pre-K now through 5th grade of children that have some learning issues. And so I'm just curious if that's on the recommendation.
We are in our 3rd year of ABA. We are still learning. We are still forming partnerships. We are still forming join Chamber of Commerce. We talk to educational leaders to figure out how we can, bridge some of these gaps and make sure we're referring out. We started building relationships with the psychiatrists that are doing the evaluations, because you wouldn't imagine the backload right now of parents waiting just to get their kiddos diagnosed or just get an eval. So we don't yet, but that's what we are biggest in right now, because we were able to take a step back a little bit from early start, because there are a lot of agencies that can help with that. We have really been able to dig in and focus on creating partnerships to try to help these families outside of, creating social groups. The hardest thing is for insurances to pay for social groups, to justify social groups. So if we can say, hey, if they have a social goal, technically we can meet up at a park once a month and they can socialize with each other. Parents can socialize with each other. Finding those loopholes, not to skirt the system, but to get people help and to cut through the red tape that's stopping people from getting help. And so those are the things, some of our kiddos, they may not be engineers, but if they know how to socialize and access their community and make friends, their quality of life is going to be so much more improved. So let's not just focus on the academic milestones. Let's make sure that they know how to access the community and the community knows how to access them. That's important to us.
And with the schools and stuff you had mentioned about schools, it's kind of tough to get in with them because they usually have their own therapists and stuff with the school district. So that would kind of exclude us out of there. But
That's okay. We're gonna connect you to a couple that
yeah,
Awesome. Awesome.
a
nice.
good fit.
Awesome.
And I was just
Yeah.
gonna say the challenge that Sean and I have is that we kind of fall in love with all of our guests. Literally, Sean just sent me a note like, "Oh my God, I love these people. We need to partner with them." And it's a problem because we have too many people that we're in love with.
Well, that's what happens with our families, and we end up creating little offices everywhere because we don't want to let go.
I get it. Well, we definitely want to be a part of all of that, and I've done more talking today, I think, than in a long time. Sean has been like, I know Sean is taking all this in, and he's dying to talk, and yet we're almost our hour's almost up already. I mean, that's what's so freaking crazy.
But
So
one thing I wanted to,
go ahead,
I
Sean,
just wanted to add right quick though is to that point as well about the resources. Where we met Sean Francis at was a community event, and we've gone to a couple of them this year. And a lot of the families that we've talked to that have come up to our booth have asked us a similar question that you asked about resources. And so that's one of the things we're compiling right now is a bunch of community resources in these different areas where our families are, because those families have no idea that, at Palmdale Boulevard Park on Saturdays in the summer, they have socialization that's going on, or at this neurodivergent friendly bar, they have tabletop games where you can bring your kids and they can play games and stuff. So we're compiling a resource list
the education
to provide,
piece. How do we educate?
to provide to our families because they want to do a lot of socialization with their kids during the summer and they don't have any place to go for that. And there's stuff out there, they just don't know it.
That's a big part of what the emphasis on the show is about also. So our website is probably about a month old, something like that. One of our biggest challenges, even though it's fairly up to date, is a resource guide that we've created at the site. So everyone that's been on the show that has a service or a connectivity, we have listed there. And so the services that Brian and I provide outside of the show, separate from it in terms of financial service and literacy, that's the same thing as is, feeding therapy or anything of that nature, because again, I always say this. I feel like I've said it 3 times this week. It always comes up as part of it's in my skin, which is the words of Muhammad Ali, which is service to others is the rent we pay for our room on earth. And that service is both formal and informal. If I go someplace and have a good experience, why shouldn't I tell everyone, especially if I paid for it and patronize the business? Elijah wears underwear like anybody else now. He's 18 years old, but he wore pull-ups later in life than most children do. We were paying for those pull-ups, and I've said it before, probably maybe 1 to 2 years longer than we should have, because we found out that the regional center will not only pay for them, but deliver them to your door. Nobody told us that. The same thing with the conservatorship that we went through. That's the same thing with everything. And as we go through those experiences, you want to let people know. But speaking of experiences, this is the portion of the show where we ask the following question with context. Your ability to change the world, right? Our ability to change the world, no matter how great or small, is tied to our willingness or ability to change ourselves. Based on that, give us just one example each of a belief that you once held and believed strongly, but no longer believe to be true.
Sean, do you want to go first? I feel like I've been doing all the talking.
For sure. I'll go first. Yeah. So for me, and this is literally based on, my personal experience and journey in life to get me to where I am right now. Growing up, it was always drilled into us. You go to junior high, you go to high school, you go to college, you get your job, and this is, life starts after that. And for me, my journey was different. As I mentioned in the beginning, I went to college for only 2 years and then left. It just wasn't for me. My parents thought I was nuts. They were not happy. They thought that I was going to end up, on the side of the street somewhere. And back then, that could have been very possible.
Right.
But nowadays, it's very, very different. There is no need for anybody to go to college or be forced into college and incur all this debt if you're not gonna, number one, finish, but number two, if you don't necessarily need to. And even when you get out of college and you have your degree, what's the first thing an employer says? Well, how much experience do you have? None, because I was just in college.
Right.
Mhm.
So my
Normalizing
thing
that
with
path, yeah.
yes, so my thing would be um, dispelling that myth that you have to go to college and get a degree to be successful, because it's the complete opposite. If there's ever a time in our history where that was not necessarily the case, it's now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I always
Beautiful.
say, coming from the Caribbean, it was you got a 4-year degree just because you needed to, at the very least. So
Yeah.
that means a lot to me. I got really messed up by that notion. So
Yeah, and
thank
and
you for
not
that.
and not to um, poop on anybody who has a degree and did all
It
of
has
that.
its
That's
value.
perfectly, yeah. It does. It has its thing. It's just not for everybody. That's all.
Right, right. Chianti?
I think mine is, I've gotten this far in life because I've been really focused on kind of setting a goal and then getting to that goal and being super happy I got to that goal, but then setting another goal, hitting that goal and being super happy. And as I'm getting older and my kids are getting older, and I'm starting to see the beauty in the small wins. I think that life is made more beautiful if we stop and celebrate the small wins. It does not mean set long-term goals, but sometimes it means set that goal and being open to that goal not being relevant in a year, or that goal changing. But what's going to make the journey worthwhile is all those small wins that you're going to get along the path to where you're going. And sometimes we think that we're going to stop and celebrate the big win and we forget about the small wins, but then we look
Mhm.
back and notice that maybe we rush through those beautiful things. So just that
Yeah.
beauty of those small wins. And I think that with our kiddos that we're working with that are just fighting to do what we take for granted every day, that
Mhm.
attitude is probably what they teach me most, is just those small wins are amazing. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah,
Those small wins
yeah,
to them are
Love
amazing.
that.
And just kind
Yeah.
of for us, because we take things for granted, to stop and
Yeah.
seeing the beauty in those small
Yeah.
wins that we get.
that's
Beautiful.
fantastic. Yeah, I always say all victories, big and small. A lot of the posts that I've made over the years would be the things that are victories along along the way, that which most people would take for granted. Today my child ate so and so, or did
Hmm.
something on his own, and
Yeah.
it teaches everything. It teaches everything, and that's why, again, that question has so much power. I think it's always resonated with me. And then, like you said, if you're not careful, what you have is this goal that is the end all and be all, and you get to the accomplishment and you're really like, okay, I appreciate it, but now what? And that's why there's a
Mhm.
Yes.
difference between
Mhm.
success and fulfillment. They
For
Yeah.
are
sure.
not the same thing. And
Not
Hmm.
at
that's why
all.
we
Yeah.
have some of the most successful people on the planet being the most unhappy, because they're
Mhm.
successful but not necessarily fulfilled. They are
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
one and the same.
For sure.
Yeah. And again,
Absolutely.
everything that's important to the general population is 10 times more important to ours.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yes,
For
because they
sure.
fight
Yeah.
10 times harder to get
Yes.
it.
For sure.
Hmm.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
starchildinterventions.com for those who are listening, starchildinterventions.com. And also check out their YouTube channel, Partners in Prosperity. It's been great having you both on. There it is. Look at it on the screen. Love it.
I believe it's called
Great having
Partners
you.
Prosper. We'll give you the link, the name of it. For some reason, when I put Partners Prosper, it comes up. So PARTNERS Prosper. And then the
Okay.
Partners in Prosperity will come up. So,
Got it.
Okay, good.
Got it. Partners
Good.
prosper. All right,
yeah.
beautiful. Thank you for that. And
Hmm.
so as we wrap up the show, I always always end by saying, the same thing. Empathy and love is always important. If you see somebody's situation, you don't know what they're going through, be empathetic. No idea what they're encountering, what their challenges are, what their hills are that they're trying to overcome.
Mhm.
Have some empathy. And if you look at the world through lenses of love, the world's just a much better place. So empathy and love always. And with that, I'll throw it to Shonda to close us out. And thank you both. This has been fascinating and love this conversation.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you guys for having us.
yeah, it's been
It's
great.
our pleasure. Thank you so much, both, for being here. You've completely exceeded my expectations, and I had expectations for a great time spent today. I am so looking forward to us working together in the future. And
For sure.
here's the thing: sometimes people are on the show, and we have this clear path and these ideas, and my wheels get to turning, and like, oh, we could do this together, we could do that. I don't have as clear a path as the wheels are turning with regard to how we can work together. What I do have a clearer path on is just that just really like you guys and we want to work together with you in some way, shape, or form, even if we just tie our shoes and chew gum.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
That's number one. Number
sure.
two, let us try and take advantage of all the lessons that are around us. Let's try and be a little bit more childlike and less childish. Let's take the lessons that our children are teaching us, neurotypical and otherwise, and remember that questions are more powerful than statements. I find lately I've been challenged with trying to live up to that because I've had a couple things that I've experienced, whether it's someone on the freeway, someone who's a parent, or something about someone that has me go, why would they do that? And really try to figure it out. And, I was telling my brother this the other day, and I said, if you really want to live with empathy and curiosity about other people, that takes work. And he goes, no, I don't think so. That's not difficult. And I said, no, if you're not paying attention to how quickly you might judge people, you probably don't do it as often as you think, but it's a real work in progress because the world tells us to do otherwise. None of us are perfect. With that said, thank you so very much. Thank you everyone for tuning in. You guys, if you can stick around with us for a quick second after, and wherever you are, if you're watching this, we love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. See you next week.